Trading seduces us with its apparent simplicity. A screen, a chart, a few clicks, and the promise of freedom. It looks logical, measurable, and fair. But anyone who has stepped into this world quickly discovers a brutal truth. The hardest part of trading has nothing to do with the market. It has to do with the trader. The same hands that execute perfect setups one day destroy them the next. The same mind that reads price action clearly in hindsight freezes in real time. Mark Douglas called this the paradox of mastery. The more we try to control the market, the less control we have over ourselves. Most traders approach the market as a battlefield where they must conquer uncertainty. They arm themselves with strategies, indicators, and analysis, but ignore the one variable that determines everything: their own psychology. The result is chaos, hesitation, revenge trades, self-sabotage. What Douglas discovered is that the market is not a problem to be solved. It's a mirror. It reflects your fears, your impulses, your need to be right, and your refusal to accept loss. The moment you understand that, everything changes. You stop asking, "How can I beat the market?" and start asking, "Why am I fighting myself?" Trading exposes the human mind in its rawest form. Every emotional weakness, greed, fear, impatience, gets amplified. There's nowhere to hide. Unlike other professions, the market gives instant feedback on your mental state. You win or lose not because the chart changed, but because you did. Douglas wanted traders to realize that discipline is not a matter of willpower. It's not about suppressing emotions or forcing yourself to follow rules. True discipline emerges naturally when your beliefs align with reality. When you stop resisting uncertainty and start accepting probabilities, discipline becomes effortless. In that sense, the disciplined trader is not about trading. It's about awareness. It's about understanding why we do what we do under pressure and how to recondition the mind to act with clarity instead of emotion. The market becomes the ultimate psychological gym. Every trade, a test of awareness. The irony is that most traders think discipline is something you impose on yourself. But discipline imposed through fear collapses the moment uncertainty strikes. The only discipline that lasts is the one born from understanding. Once you see the structure of your mind clearly, you don't need to fight impulses. They lose power on their own. So this journey is not about becoming fearless or perfect. It's about becoming self-aware enough to act even when fear is present. That's the essence of trading mastery. The ability to move calmly through uncertainty without seeking control over it. Douglas teaches that every trader begins in chaos and ends in detachment. Between those two stages lies the process of unlearning, shedding illusions of control, of certainty, of being right. That's the path we're about to walk. This is the story of how the disciplined trader is forged, not by mastering the market, but by mastering the mind that meets it. And the first step on that path is confronting the one enemy that lives within, the conditioned, fearful self that cannot stand not knowing what happens next. The first lesson of the disciplined trader is simple but brutal. Your biggest enemy is not volatility, manipulation, or bad analysis. It's you. The mind that seeks certainty in an uncertain world becomes its own worst opponent. Most traders lose not because they don't know what to do, but because they can't do what they know. Their actions are hijacked by impulses, fears, and beliefs that operate below awareness. Douglas describes how the human mind is conditioned from childhood to avoid mistakes and seek approval. In school, being wrong meant being punished. In life, success is measured by being right more often than wrong. But the market doesn't care about any of that. It rewards adaptability, not accuracy. It punishes rigidity, not ignorance. Every attempt to transfer the logic of everyday life into trading ends in pain. This conditioning creates a psychological paradox. You know intellectually that losses are part of the game, yet emotionally, you cannot accept them. Each losing trade feels personal. You experience it as proof of inadequacy. The ego screams, "You should have known!" And in that moment, the trader shifts from executing a system to defending an identity. That's why hesitation appears. That's why revenge trading happens. It's not about the setup, it's about ego preservation. The mind refuses to take the next valid trade because it's terrified of confirming its own weakness. So it waits, overanalyzes, and sabotages until the opportunity is gone. Then frustration takes over, and the cycle restarts. The real danger isn't losing money. It's losing control of your state. The undisciplined trader reacts emotionally to randomness, creating chaos from neutrality. The disciplined trader, in contrast, recognizes that chaos was never in the market. It was in his perception. The moment you understand this, the market stops being an enemy. It becomes feedback. Douglas teaches that the ego's obsession with being right blinds you to what the market is actually doing. The more you need to prove yourself, the less you see reality. Every tick that goes against you feels like a personal attack. You start fighting ghosts, defending pride instead of managing risk. The professional knows this and steps aside, acting only when the setup aligns with plan, not emotion. To break this pattern, awareness must replace identity. The trader must learn to observe thoughts and emotions without becoming them. "I'm feeling fear" is different from "I am afraid." The first creates space for choice. The second enslaves you. This simple shift is the foundation of discipline. Douglas suggests journaling as a mirror for this process. Writing down thoughts during trades reveals patterns the mind refuses to see. Over time, you notice that the same emotional triggers repeat: loss, regret, impatience. Once you can observe them clearly, they lose their power to control behavior. Eventually, the trader learns to separate action from emotion. You can feel fear, but still execute. You can experience doubt, but still follow the plan. That's discipline in its purest form, not suppression, but alignment between intention and behavior. The inner enemy never fully disappears. It just loses command. You'll still feel fear, greed, and frustration, but they become background noise instead of marching orders. Once that happens, you're no longer fighting yourself. You're finally free to trade. To become a disciplined trader, you must first understand the nature of the environment you operate in. The market is not a game of skill against another person. It is a collective expression of billions of decisions, driven by emotion, news, algorithms, and randomness. It is pure uncertainty, dynamic, fluid, and beyond control. Yet most traders approach it as if it were something predictable, something they can bend to their will. That misconception is the root of all emotional pain in trading. You can't impose order on chaos. You can only learn to navigate it. Mark Douglas insisted that the market is neutral. It doesn't know who you are, it doesn't care how much you've studied, and it certainly doesn't owe you anything. Every tick, every candle, every move is just information, nothing more. The meaning you assign to that information comes entirely from your own mind. This means that the market never hurts you. What hurts is your resistance to what the market is showing you. Every emotional reaction, from anger to despair, is the mind rejecting reality in favor of what it wishes were true. This realization can be liberating or terrifying. Liberating because it means nothing is personal. The market isn't punishing you. Terrifying because it removes every excuse. You can no longer blame manipulation, the whales, or bad luck. The responsibility is yours alone. Not for the outcome of each trade, but for how you respond to uncertainty. The disciplined trader accepts this truth. The undisciplined one spends years avoiding it. The market's neutrality exposes a fundamental flaw in human psychology. We crave certainty. Our brains evolved to predict danger and control our surroundings. That instinct helps us survive in the wild, but kills us in the markets. The market is not a tiger you can tame. It's the weather. You can't control it, only prepare for it. The trader who demands certainty becomes anxious, impulsive, and irrational. The one who accepts uncertainty becomes calm and adaptive. This is why Douglas placed so much emphasis on probabilistic thinking. Every trade is just one event in a large sample size. You don't need to know what will happen next. You only need to know that your system, over time, has an edge. Once you truly believe this, the obsession with predicting disappears. You stop asking, will this trade win? And start asking, did I execute correctly? That shift from outcome to process is the birth of discipline. Ironically, most traders claim to understand probability, but behave as if it doesn't apply to them. They risk too much on one position, panic after 2 losses, and double size after 1 win. This is not trading. It's gambling wrapped in logic. Douglas would say that until you fully internalize uncertainty, you will act inconsistently, no matter how good your strategy is. Consistency is not born from knowledge. It's born from acceptance. To internalize uncertainty, you must observe how the market behaves without judgment. Watch it long enough, and patterns begin to appear. Not in price, but in your reactions. You'll notice when your heart races, when your hands tighten on the mouse, when your thoughts start to spiral. The market becomes your teacher, showing you where you're still attached, where your ego still demands control. Every emotional spike is a mirror, not a signal. This awareness transforms your relationship with the market. Instead of fighting it, you begin to dance with it. You no longer seek to predict, you seek to participate. The goal shifts from being right to being aligned. You wait for conditions that match your plan, act without hesitation, and accept whatever outcome follows. The disciplined trader doesn't ask for certainty. They act within probability and let the math handle the rest. Over time, this mindset turns trading from chaos into rhythm. You stop reacting to every tick because you understand that randomness is built into the game. You expect streaks, variants, and reversals. Nothing surprises you. Losses stop feeling like betrayal, and wins stop feeling like validation. Both are simply data, feedback loops that refine your process. This is the beginning of emotional neutrality. When you finally understand the nature of the market, you realize it was never against you. It was always indifferent. It was motivational, a blank canvas reflecting your internal state. The disciplined trader sees this and feels peace where others feel pressure. That peace is not passivity, it's precision. It's the ability to act without emotional interference. And it's in that neutrality that mastery begins. When most traders think about discipline, they imagine a battle of willpower, forcing themselves to follow rules, controlling emotions through sheer strength, grinding through discomfort until it becomes habit. But this version of discipline is built on resistance. It assumes that you must suppress your nature to succeed. Mark Douglas dismantled this illusion completely. True discipline, he argued, is not about force. It's about alignment. When your beliefs match market realities, discipline flows effortlessly. When they don't, every trade becomes a fight against yourself. The misconception comes from how we're raised. From an early age, we're taught that discipline is punishment, something we endure when we've done something wrong. In trading, that conditioning leads to guilt and self-criticism. You break a rule, take a loss, and immediately begin scolding yourself. I need to be more disciplined. But that very mindset reinforces fear and avoidance. You start associating discipline with pain. No one sustains behavior that feels like punishment. Real discipline must come from understanding, not from self-abuse. Douglas reframed discipline as the natural result of belief alignment. If you believe losses are unacceptable, you'll hesitate or move stops. If you believe the market owes you, you'll overtrade. If you believe consistency comes from control, you'll spiral after every unexpected move. To be disciplined, you don't need more rules. You need beliefs that no longer contradict the nature of the market. Once your inner model of reality matches how the market actually works, discipline emerges spontaneously. This is why forced discipline fails. You can force yourself to follow rules for a while, but under pressure, emotion always overrides willpower. The market exposes every inconsistency. You can't fake belief. You either accept risk or you don't. When your mind is truly aligned with probability, following your plan no longer requires effort. You act automatically because the action makes sense at a deep level. It's not an act of control. It's an act of congruence. Douglas often said that traders who constantly break their rules are not weak. They're simply conflicted. They intellectually understand the rules, but emotionally reject their implications. For example, they know they should cut losses quickly, but emotionally they can't accept being wrong. Until that emotional charge is resolved, no amount of discipline training will help. The work, therefore, isn't in building strength. It's in dissolving resistance. The disciplined trader doesn't wake up each day forcing themselves to obey. They wake up understanding that obedience to the process is what keeps them free. Rules are not cages, they are structure. Within that structure lies freedom. Freedom from impulsivity, from fear, from chaos. When you stop seeing discipline as confinement and start seeing it as precision, the whole game changes. Practical discipline begins with clarity. You define exactly what your edge is, what risk you accept, and what behavior is non-negotiable. Then comes acceptance. Accepting that even perfect execution can lead to losses. Finally, repetition builds trust. After enough trades executed with integrity, the brain rewires itself. Following rules no longer feels like effort. It feels like identity. Discipline becomes who you are, not something you try to do. This is why Douglas emphasized journaling and reflection. Writing after every trade doesn't just track data. It trains honesty. You confront your behavior without judgment, seeing where your actions drift from your beliefs. Over time, this process strips away illusion. You stop telling yourself comforting stories and start seeing patterns. The trader who reflects without ego becomes their own mentor. The myth of discipline dies when you realize it cannot be forced from the outside. It must be built from within. The market will never give you control, but it will always give you feedback. Every impulsive entry, every emotional exit, every time you break your own rule, the market is teaching you something about yourself. The disciplined trader listens. The undisciplined one repeats. In the end, discipline is not about rigidity. It's about coherence. When your beliefs, emotions, and actions all point in the same direction, there's no conflict. And where there's no conflict, there's flow. You no longer need to try to be disciplined. You simply are. That's why the most consistent traders don't look tense or mechanical. They look calm, almost effortless. Because true discipline isn't tension, it's harmony. There comes a point in every trader's journey when discipline no longer feels like effort. You're no longer forcing yourself to act correctly. You simply do. That is the moment when you stop being the participant consumed by emotion and become the observer who sees everything clearly. Mark Douglas called this the ultimate transformation, when the trader detaches from outcome and identifies only with process. At this level, trading ceases to be an emotional roller coaster and becomes an exercise in awareness. The observer is not emotionless. They are unreactive. Fear, greed, and doubt still arise, but they no longer dictate action. You notice them like clouds passing across the sky. They appear, you acknowledge them, and they move on. The undisciplined trader tries to suppress feelings, but suppression creates tension. The disciplined observer does the opposite. They allow emotion to exist without judgment. This surrender neutralizes its power. Douglas compared this to learning how to watch your own mind in real time. When the market moves sharply against you, the untrained trader feels attacked and fights back. The observer, however, sees the urge to fight as just another mental event. They recognize the sensation, the quickened heartbeat, the impulse to act, but they don't obey it. Awareness becomes the buffer between stimulus and response. That gap is where freedom lives. At this level, execution feels effortless because it no longer requires negotiation. There's no inner debate between should I hold and should I exit. The observer simply follows the plan. Every trade is a data point, every outcome feedback. The mind stops translating events into stories. There's no good trade or bad trade, only trades executed correctly or not. Once you stop labeling outcomes emotionally, you stop creating unnecessary suffering. This detachment often feels foreign at first. We're conditioned to believe that caring deeply equals performing better. But in the market, caring too much about outcomes is precisely what destroys performance. The observer still cares about growth, but not about any single trade. They understand that attachment to results is ego disguised as ambition. True professionalism is measured by consistency of process, not intensity of emotion. To cultivate this state, Douglas recommended mental rehearsal and self-observation. Before the trading session, visualize possible scenarios: winning, losing, missing trades, and practice responding calmly in each case. Then during live trading, become a silent witness. Observe your reactions without trying to change them. Over time, this develops meta-awareness, the ability to watch yourself trade without getting lost in the experience. When this awareness stabilizes, something profound happens. Time slows down. The same market that once felt chaotic now feels predictable. Not because you can see the future, but because you've stopped resisting the present. Every candle, every fluctuation unfolds naturally. You no longer chase moves or fear reversals. The observer moves in sync with probability, adapting fluidly to what is, not to what should be. This state is often described as being in the zone. It's not mystical, it's mechanical. The mind stops oscillating between past, regret, and future, anticipation, and operates entirely in the present. Action and awareness merge. The trader no longer thinks about discipline. They embody it. The process becomes art, precise, rhythmic, and alive. The observer doesn't react. They respond. They don't predict. They perceive. Outside observers may call this detachment cold, but in truth, it's freedom. The disciplined trader doesn't suppress emotion because they no longer need validation from the market. They know who they are and what their system does. There's nothing to prove. From that stability arises a calm confidence, not arrogance, not apathy, but quiet mastery. The market's chaos no longer infects the mind. It reflects its clarity. Douglas believed that this is where trading transforms into meditation. Every decision becomes an act of awareness. Every loss becomes a lesson in acceptance. Every win becomes a reminder of impermanence. The observer doesn't measure themselves by results, but by presence. And when presence governs performance, consistency is inevitable. In that silence between impulse and action, discipline becomes not what you do, but who you are. When Mark Douglas wrote The Disciplined Trader, he wasn't teaching people how to make money. He was teaching them how to think. The book's real subject isn't trading, it's human nature. The charts, strategies, and systems are only mirrors through which we come face to face with our own conditioning. The disciplined trader, therefore, isn't just someone who follows rules. It's someone who has learned to see clearly, to see how belief creates perception, how emotion distorts truth, and how surrender reveals mastery. The paradox of trading is that freedom is achieved through structure, and control is found through surrender. The more you try to dominate the market, the more it punishes your arrogance. The moment you accept that you control only yourself, the market becomes your ally. That shift in consciousness from control to cooperation marks the birth of maturity. The disciplined trader doesn't fight reality. They flow with it. They don't chase perfection. They perfect their presence. Douglas wanted traders to realize that discipline is not the end goal. It's the beginning of awareness. Once you understand your own mind deeply enough, trading becomes less about prediction and more about participation. You are no longer at war with uncertainty. You are at peace with probability. From this peace comes consistency, not as a performance hack, but as a natural byproduct of harmony between belief and behavior. Beyond charts and profits, the disciplined trader points to something spiritual. It's a meditation on ego and impermanence, on the futility of chasing certainty in a world that was never meant to be certain. The market, like life itself, is a constant negotiation between chaos and order. You cannot master it, but you can master your response to it, and that mastery is the true definition of freedom. In the end, Douglas leaves us with a single timeless truth. You don't trade the market. You trade your beliefs about it. When those beliefs are aligned with reality, discipline stops being an act of effort and becomes an expression of understanding. That is the essence of mastery. Not conquering the external world, but transcending the internal one. The disciplined trader is not a different kind of trader. He is a different kind of human being, calm, conscious, and free.